Today we're looking at the Townshend Acts. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bellringer. Please don't forget to subscribe and take a look at the questions down in the description. So after the failure and repeal of the Sugar Act and Stamp Act in 1766, Britain still had the debt remaining from the French and Indian War, and American colonists and the British were locked in a bitter argument over the issue of the British taxing the colonies. And remember, the colonists argued that, they had no elected representatives in Parliament in London where the laws were being passed, so they felt like they shouldn't have to pay those taxes. Many colonists began to question the authority of Parliament over the colonies. Now enter Charles Townshend, who was the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, or basically the Secretary of the Treasury for Britain. He proposed a series of laws which of course became known as the Townshend Acts that were passed from 1767 to 1768. These laws were designed to accomplish a few different purposes. First, taxes collected through these acts would help to pay salaries of governors and judges in the colonies. Britain wanted to make sure that high-ranking officials in the colonies remained loyal to Britain and did not question their authority. Second, to create a better way of enforcing taxes and punishing those who tried to avoid them. And then lastly, to assert or prove Britain's authority or right to tax the colonies. In June of 1767, the Revenue Act was passed, which placed new taxes on items such as lead, glass, paint, and paper. But more importantly, it gave tax collectors in the colonies what they called writs of assistance, which was basically the right to search a ship's cargo without giving a reason. It was intended to deter smuggling, which American colonists used frequently to dodge paying taxes. The colonists were absolutely irate about the writs of assistance because they felt it violated their rights to privacy, as now tax collectors could search places without really giving a cause or a reason. Later in June of 1767, the Indemnity Act was passed, which basically reduced the price of tea imported by the East India Company and was an attempt to make colonists purchase tea and pay taxes on it instead of smuggling it in from Holland, which is what most of them were doing anyway. And we'll see, this will be a big issue later on when we get to the Tea Act. And then likewise in June of 1676, the Commissioners of Customs Act was passed, which created a new office headquartered in Boston that would have other offices throughout the colonies that would then make sure that taxes were being collected and that smuggling was being punished. Needless to say, the creation of these new customs offices led to confrontations between tax collectors and colonists throughout all of the colonies. Lastly, the Vice-Admiralty Court Act was passed in July of 1768. Now, interestingly, Charles Townshend, for which these acts were named, died suddenly in September of 1767, so some historians do not consider the Vice-Admiralty Court Act to be part of the Townshend Acts. But what this act did was it gave the British Navy authority over prosecuting smugglers, not colonial courts. Hopefully you're getting the idea that smuggling was a big issue in the colonies. But these courts were to be run by judges appointed by the British government and not, colonial judges. And these judges would be given 5% of any fine that the judge levied against smugglers when they found someone guilty of smuggling. The decisions were made solely by the judge without the, option of having a trial by jury or anything. Needless to say, the judges now had incentive to find people guilty of smuggling in order to collect fines that then they would get a percentage of. And then the other thing to note here is that, since these decisions were simply made by judges and not a jury, many colonists viewed this as a violation of their basic rights. The colonial response to the Townshend Acts were, as you could expect, outrage. Colonists began to organize boycotts, just as they had done before with the Stamp Act. In this case, though, colonial merchants began to sign what they called non-importation agreements, agreeing not to import British goods taxed by the Townshend Acts. In Virginia, the House of Burgesses passed a resolution stating that Parliament had no right to tax the colonies without their consent. Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts all sent petitions to Parliament and King George to repeal these taxes. One of the most well-known colonial responses to the Townshend Acts was the series of 12 essays or articles by John Dickinson entitled Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, which began to be published in December of 1767. In his essays, Dickinson laid out an argument for why the colonies should not be subject to British taxes. Unrest over the Townshend Acts would become particularly violent, especially in Boston, where we will see the Boston Massacre occur in March of 1770, but I'll cover that in another Bellringer. Eventually, parts of the Townshend Acts were repealed, while others were repealed and then put back into place. But overall, the Townshend Acts would be a major contributing factor leading to the colonies declaring independence, and then, of course, the start of the American Revolution. So with that, hopefully you learned something, and thanks for watching.